Hey folks, Dave, the not so evil Viking 13 here, and today I'm going to bring you guys some first impressions from The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. I call this first impressions, yet I'm actually about 14 hours into the game. That does include a lot of side quests, but at last I've made it out of the starting area. First up, if you haven't been hearing about The Witcher 3, then you're just not paying attention. Reviews for this game actually broke about a week early thanks to some early PS4 review copies, and the review scores have just been insane across the board. And I was pretty nervous going into it, watching out for those reviews, because this game is just a completely new attempt for CD Projekt Red, the developers, and it's been delayed a bunch of times. Given the massive scale of this project and all of the delays, I was worried that they may have tried to push the bar a little bit too far. But the reviews came out, and it's 10 out of 10s, 9.5s out of 10s, 94 out of 100, just solid reviews across the board. So I felt pretty justified with my level of hype going into the launch. You guys might have seen my hype podcast with Germ Gaming last week, and honestly guys, I have been looking forward to this game for years now. I got super into the Witcher series in 2010 and 2011 with the release of The Witcher 2. I played through both games multiple times. And then I followed things up last year by reading the entire book series, including some fan translations where there were not official translations available, most of them being in Polish still. So yeah, you could definitely argue that I am beyond immersed in this world, and had set my expectations and my excitement levels overall very, very high. And there comes a point when you're looking forward to a game's launch where you can definitely overhype yourself and, look at years of developer promises and trailers and screenshots and pour over every bit of information and just get to a point where no product could actually live up to those expectations. And Monday night, when the game went live at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I was worried that I'd kind of put myself in that boat, that there was just no way that this game could live up to how excited I was for it after all these years. Well guys, I am happy to report that that's not the case. I'm still actually a little bit stunned at how much I'm enjoying this game and how much my hype train feels justified now. I mean, the game is just an incredibly polished and immersive experience. You go into it and you have introductions that both get older players who have played the older games, book readers, and players who are just totally new to this series into the world. The intros are dramatic and introduce you to the game's core mechanics in a way that advances the story but doesn't quite teach you things like you're a complete moron. There's sections of the tutorial sections that you can skip, and then pretty quickly you're going right out into the first mini open world section, and that is White Orchard. This would be what a lot of games would consider their just tutorial areas. They're not nearly as big as other areas, things are carefully leveled, and kind of appropriate for players who are just starting out their journey in this open world game. And there's also plenty of content, not too dense of content, but just enough to keep you going from point A to point B to point C to point D, wanting to check it all out. But here in The Witcher 3, White Orchard ended up being a really good-sized area. It took me over 10 hours to get through all of White Orchard and head out into what you would consider the more open world, the larger sections of the game. Now some of you guys might be saying, whoa, 10 hours for the introduction section? Like, how many fetch quests is that? How many wolf pelts do I have to go find? And all that jazz. The answer is really nothing like that, especially in the introduction section. All of the side quests have unique characters and voice acting and animations and plot elements, and you just kind of travel around and just unravel these side stories that, while they are related to the world and occasionally tie in to the main story, are just totally additional content. Not in your usual open world game side quest mentality, where a lot of the times it is just a fetch quest. In this case, like I said, you've got unique experiences. and even some funny experiences in there too, which is really cool to see, especially given how dark, dreary, and grim this world is. The Witcher series has always had just a tiny bit of humor around the edges to keep things interesting without making them super grim. To give you guys an understanding of just the scope of this game, I'm going to list off some of the things that I did in this first introduction section of White Orchard, and I am going to keep it spoiler free just so you guys can enjoy this for yourselves, because these games are definitely ones where you want to do the exploring yourself and the side quest yourself. But in the first section, I practiced my horse combat, I rescued peasants from cursed villages, I uncovered old murders, I found caches of monsters, I helped patrol a empty battlefield after a just absolutely horrific battle, I helped an old lady with what started out sounding like a very mundane missing housewares task, but ended up being a bit of a look at the current war between the Northern Kingdoms and the Empire of Nilfgaard. Like I said before, a lot of these side quests tie in really nicely with the environment, the lore, the story, and even the main plot, even if sometimes they don't appear to be doing so in the beginning of the quests. I also discovered some paths that previous Witchers had taken. I listened to some fights at the inn. I got into some fights at the inn. I also practiced my crafting, my alchemy, my sword forging, my armor forging. I discovered new recipes, treasure caches. I fought a bandit camp on top of a giant abandoned castle, found deserter camps, attacked wolves and was attacked by wolves, got my horse killed at least a couple of times, almost rode off of a cliff, and generally just had a Red Dead Redemption-like experience, but in the world of The Witcher. All along the way though, guys, everything just exceeded my expectations. The voice acting, the way that characters are interpreted that may have just been mentioned in the books and haven't been seen in the games yet, the way that all the lore connects together, I love that stuff. It's all done so well. You can tell this is not only the open world game that the developers have been wanting to make for a while, but it uses characters that they're genuinely caring about, and it's a world that they're excited to share with you. The care and attention to detail in this game is mind-blowing, and I love it. I've mentioned the visuals a few times, but I kind of want to park there and talk about it for a few minutes, because there's been a lot of talk of, is this another Watch Dogs? Has there been a downgrade? Were the developers deceptive in those early trailers? And having played the 13 or so hours of the game that I have, I can assure you that this game looks gorgeous. It is a beautiful game. It is definitely the best looking open world RPG that I have ever played. Bar none. There it is. It looks better than GTA 5, although GTA 5 also looks fantastic. So what about those early trailers? Well, what's missing from those? What about those side-by-side comparisons? Well, here's what I've noticed as both a player, a fan, and a 3D artist. I do 3D artwork professionally as my full-time job. Yes, you can pick apart certain assets, certain individual models that have been lowered in detail. I wouldn't call them a downgrade, just because, as the developers of The Witcher 3 pointed out for themselves, you can't really downgrade something that is not finished yet. They're still trying to figure out, how much memory do we have for each area? What can go here? Sure, it's a downgrade for specific assets in some cases from the trailers, the early videos, to videos that came out a few months ago. But it's not like they just dropped a trailer or the game itself on our laps and said, surprise, things are looking different. They've launched a ton of trailers and gameplay videos over the months up to launch. We've seen this game over and over again, and we've seen the changes. This is not deceptive. This is just the reality of game development. Additionally, some of the art style has changed. The game went from the overly sharpened, kind of brooding, foggy, just very cinematic and stylized look of The Witcher 2 to a much more alive, animated, and vibrant world in The Witcher 3. A lot of the vegetation has been kind of softened a bit, and there are now wind effects, of course, that dynamically affect forests and groups of grass like nothing else I've ever seen before. And I know it's a cliche, but even here in the video, guys, the video does not do it justice. It looks extra sharp and extra blurry in a video, but sitting there with the graphics right in front of you and the wind blowing through all these trees and grasses, and the sound of branches snapping and the wind howling and everything just moving together, the world feels alive. And I've never seen a game that has such dense vegetation as The Witcher 3 does. Yes, it's not as sharp and 100% photoreal looking as the original videos, but it is denser and it is much more alive, and I love the effect. It works very, very well for a fantasy world like this. Even a grim fantasy world. You have very grim, very dark things happening in what can be a very, very beautiful world. Sure, the changes might not be up to everyone's preferences, but to use a very appropriate expression here, let's not miss the forest for the trees. This game is glorious looking, especially on PC, where you can crank the level of detail loading up a bit and get extra dense stuff going on as far as the decals and vegetation and effects go. This game looks great. Let's also not forget that things have improved for the better since those early 2013 trailers, and not just lateral moves or asset reductions, as far as detail goes. Early facial expressions and character models were not great, and the launch versions of the facial expressions and textures and the hair detailing on characters and monsters both, this game is so expressive. I've never seen a game that conveyed emotion from characters as well as the characters in The Witcher 3. And I really can't say more than that without going into some specific story elements, but you can just see very subtle expressions on the characters' faces, and it's so convincing and looks so, so good. In the end, I'm also looking forward to trying out maybe some sweet FX color modifiers for post effects. I think I'd like to sharpen the game up just a bit more because I got used to that in The Witcher 2 and those early videos, and I might try it out with some mods and see how it looks. I might also try some desaturation and some color filters, but the beautiful colors in the world are growing on me rapidly, and I do like the dichotomy between the vibrance and happiness of the colors and, like I said, all those dark things happening within the world. After all, in real life, dark actions don't mean a dark sun and a dark sky. I think the only graphical weakness that really stands out in The Witcher 3 at this point in time, outside of glitches, is that the level of detail system is still a bit aggressive. Medium distant trees still kind of look a bit flat. That can be improved upon. But overall, far vistas and close areas of vegetation all look fantastic. Anyway, that's enough about graphics. Let's just wrap this up with a few final thoughts. There's also been some discussion about the advertising from CD Projekt Red about Witcher 3 is an open world that requires no load screens, and you can just go from one area to the next, and you can just go inside of houses, and everything just loads in dynamically. And for the most part, this is true, and it works very, very well. But there are load screens in between major sections of the world. What this means is, the game is divided into basically 4 very large sections, areas of the continent, the Witcher universe's world. And most of these areas, most of these regions, are larger than Skyrim itself as a whole. They're impressively large, but they're also kind of situated around different parts of the continent. And the developer's official word on why there are load screens, because there are, in between these giant regions, is that they couldn't fit them all into one area realistically. They didn't want you to be able to ride from one side of the continent to the next on horseback in just a couple of hours. I kind of buy that. I can see that from a lore perspective. These are very large countries, and the areas that you're playing in, although super large, are still not country and continent sized. I'm not convinced though that there wasn't any technical limitations whatsoever that also added a push for these load limitations. I think there are some technical limitations that were overcome by adding those load screens. Regardless, you will very rarely see a load screen, and in my case, having the game on an SSD, when you do see a load screen, it lasts for a handful, I'm not even kidding here, a handful of seconds. Maybe 5 or 6 at most. I actually frequently don't have time to read what's on the load screens before they're gone again. And remember, you're traveling between Skyrim-sized regions and across continents here. That's pretty reasonable. In the end though, they probably shouldn't have pushed that so hard in the advertising. I'll also talk about the combat just briefly. It's not quite as in-depth as the Dark Souls series or say Bloodborne, a related game, but it feels really good. There is parrying and defensive rolls, and you have to use your signs and your crossbow in combat. I think as much fun as it is to fight monsters, fighting humans is really intense. I'm playing on one of the harder difficulties, and you really have to be tactical with your combat, and groups of bandits can and will kill you, so quick save often and learn how they move and learn how to best use all of your tactics together to defeat them. The combat just as a whole does feel dynamic, yet action-packed, and also very strategic. Like I said, you've got to use all of your abilities together. The combat feels so good. I think the only real downside is the awkward weightiness of Geralt as the player movements are concerned. Even turning off mouse acceleration and doing a hardware cursor, there's a weird clunkiness to how Geralt moves. He's a bit like a tank, and you can expect to get stuck on a lot of stuff. On stairs, the side of doors. Like, if you're going to go through a door, expect to hit the side of it at least once or twice before you make it through. It's just a little bit awkward, and I hope to see that tightened up in a patch. It's more than playable, but everything else with the combat and the movement feels so good, I just want to see that improved just a bit. Man guys, I'm just realizing I've been talking for a while and I've still got tons of stuff to cover. So let me just lay it out for you. Horse riding, it works great. It works like you'd expect it to. You can add saddlebags to your horse to carry more loot, blinders to help them not get so scared in combat, and while it's kind of hard to hit things from horseback with your sword, it is doable and really awesome when it works. All of the inventory management and alchemy and upgrades and smithing, all of that just works exactly like we always hoped it would. It's straightforward, easy to figure out, easy to remember, and easy to use. I'm already way into upgrading things, selling loot, organizing my loot. Everything is easily accessible and easy to dig through, super immersive as always, and a huge improvement over The Witcher 1 and 2. Props to the UI team, everything's looking good so far. I think my only UI wish might be for the addition of a hide HUD command, just a quick button to get rid of that HUD because the game world is so beautiful and immersive. I just want to cruise around on my horse with the HUD turned off without having to go into the options and do it all bit by bit manually. Well guys, there you have it. There's my 13 hours of first impressions so far. And I am just so excited to say that once again in 2015, there's a game launch that you can just get hyped about. There's a few rough patches, some minor controversy, but overall, this is a magnificent game that I am just barely at 13 hours scratching the surface of. If you're on the fence and you like RPGs and you've played any of the previous games, or you're a fan of Skyrim, for example, or if you just like nice things, I know I say this all the time, but this is a game for you. This is a game you can get excited about. If you're a PC player, get excited because the game does look gorgeous on your PC. And with more mods to come, it can only get better from here. If you're a console player, from what I hear, both the PS4 and Xbox One versions of the game also look great and play great. If you're stuck on a console or that's all you have, no worries, you can also enjoy this fantastic game. I'm gonna stop talking now because I want to play like at least 20 more minutes before bed, and I'm already pushing it for getting any kind of sleep tonight. I just can't get enough of the world of The Witcher 3. Props to CD Projekt Red. These are guys you can support and trust. There's free DLC out already with more to come, and I can't wait to see what's in store for the future for The Witcher 3. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you guys next time.
No interest.